Okay, g'day, and welcome to my channel, Iron Horse. Um, Today, as some people may or may not have known, there was a modern day debate scheduled, and you'll probably actually find what it was called because it got cancelled twice, which is quite interesting. Hang on, I've got a laptop here to help me today. It was called the "Does God God does not exist," which was going to be Leo Snuffleupagus, whatever his name is, and Albert, some fellow Aussie dude, and Nadir was the other one. This Hussein fella dropped out. It was meant to originally have been atheist versus Muslims, and I just clicked on it this morning and thought, yeah, okay, another bloody religious debate. Some of these philosophical ones I do actually enjoy, at least, sitting in the comments. But because the Hussein fella apparently did a no-show, Modern Day Debate says to a guy called Stephen, I believe, was in the chat, asked him if he'd come on, and I just commented, yeah, good point you made there, Stephen. And Modern Day Debate, James, obviously, top fella too, really good. That's why I like the channel so much, because James is actually mostly non-partisan and pretty fair most of the time. So anyway, he invited me on, and I said, well, if nobody else wants to go on, sure, why not? In fact, it's one of the debates I've been quite interested in, apart from flat Earth, for some time, is, who are we, where we come from? Well, obviously, it's very much related to the flat Earth, and plus I got a little bit of a, bit of a, what do you call it? I don't know, something to, is it bone to grind? That's a weird expression, isn't it? Something I wanted to talk about, Leo Snuffleupagus, I always forget his name. Leo Syphilis, I think that's it. The funny thing was, on an after show the other week, it was on Amy Newman's channel, and I sat in line waiting for ages and ages to go on, and finally I said, stuff this. I've got other things I got to do, which is what I've been doing today, actually. Despite still being dressed in my robe, I have been doing other things. I had a late brunch and stuff. So, I just opted out. And when I came back, Leo Syphilis was there, and the way he was talking, he's just carrying on like he likes a bit of a little, you know what I mean? And I got no problem with that. But if you're going to turn into a spoiled brat little child or whatever, we'll have words to exchange. So I was talking. Well, I just left a little comment in the channel, say, because the way he's talking, he sounded really ghetto. I'm not sure, the guy. It's one I've been meant to talk about for some time now. I can't even think of his name now. He's another American dude that sounds very, this is what I'm talking about type of thing, like Brother Sanchez. That's the one. What I'm saying is that you can't do that, right? And don't get me wrong, he has some pretty good content, but geez, they waste a lot of time just talking like that and stuff. And anyway, so Leo's carrying on a bit like that, so I just left a comment saying, Leo is proof that you can take the boy out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of the... Oh, hang on. Maybe I said man at the time, or the person. I didn't say boy. Okay, I didn't say boy at that stage. I say Leo's proof that you can take the man out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of the man. And he comes back whinging, we should ban him, he's a wit, and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, calm your farm, Leo. And so I just go ahead and do it then, boy. Like boy as in child, not as in boy as in the N-word. Anyway, so I got banned. Oh, what a loss. Nah. So anyway, I thought this was going to be a good debate. Yeah, this time the atheists were going to have to argue the positive negative, which means they're the ones that have no belief in a God. So it's upon them to prove that there isn't. And so Leo started with his argument. He had to do it twice, actually, because technical issues, because Ryan, and maybe because I'm there, like it seems that there's quite a few apple carts have been upset in my wake, and they're just irrelevant, mild, nothing sort of ones. So he was even talking about mind, the AI mind, as if artificial intelligence is mind. It's not. It's just a bunch of algorithms, keywords, and the accumulation of responses triggers it to say something which seems appropriate. And this AI stuff has been going on for many years, actually. I've remember talking with some AI bot typing to one some years back, and I found it quite interesting because I'd always try and trick it up. That's part of the fun, just wasting a bit of time. And so yeah, the AI mind is never going to be a mind. It's just going to be a compilation of algorithms and pre-programmed responses, looking for the keywords and having enough examples to be able to compute through billions of them at a time to come up with something that seems intelligent, but it will never be intelligent. And if it ever does become intelligent, it will be on the side of the dark side, if such a thing could exist. See, the true mind of humanity, the true spirit, is non-biological. And what was his name? I wrote it down. Albert. Yeah, the fellow called Albert. He was starting to ask before the debate even began, do I believe in mind? And it's like, well, that's a good question. And that's when Ryan piped in and said, well, save this stuff for the debate, which never happened, of course. And so I'm a little bit primed for a debate. I wouldn't mind having that debate. So I made a few notes. So, well, yeah, do I believe in mind? Well, obviously. I mean, what do we think with? And this is, I think, quite a fundamental thought in philosophy itself, is that what is mind and what is a thought? We can hold a physical thing. All physical things can be held or seen or touched or felt or smelt, or, even a smell is technically physical. It's gaseous particles of a certain type that our nose can detect. Sound is technically physical, even though it's not as solid, but it's still physical because it exists in the world of physics. But a thought, on the other hand, is beyond. It's higher vibrational frequency than sound and even light. Somebody once said that nothing will ever move faster than the speed of light, and my comeback to that was, what about the speed of thought? Like you could think yourself on the other side of the moon just like that, just by thinking about it. And light can't go that fast. It takes 3 seconds apparently to go around the entire Earth, assuming a ball. And of course, we no longer assume a ball. We know there's the Earth and there's all the misconceptions and fantasies otherwise, trying to turn it into an oblate spheroid and all sorts of other crazy nonsense that have us twirling and whirling and hurtling through a vacuum of space. Meanwhile, every experience tells us the Earth is not moving. All the theories about the moving Earth are 100% theoretical. They exist on paper. They're mathematical theories. They have no what's the best word? Reflection, no bearing, no influence, nothing tangible about them that reflects our reality. Our reality is what it is. And in fact, when you ask God, if you could ask God what it is, and the response is, I am that which I am. That is it. So the atheistic point of view is to suggest they don't believe in a God because they've probably never been presented with the correct idea of what God is. And the idea, again, is thought. So they will say, well, all ideas of God are man-made concepts, and to a degree, that is correct, because we are thinking the wrong thought. We are thinking that God is something separate from us, something that we can appeal to, something who would either care or not care for us, something that can change the course of our lives, but chooses not to. And that was where Leo started making his argument. Just 1 second there. There it is. He started saying that if God is all this omnipotent stuff, which this is the common sort of argument that many atheists go by, that evil would not exist. And therefore, because evil exists, therefore God does not exist. Because, hang on a second. Now think about it for a minute, or for an eon, for a couple of 1,000 billion years or something. Think about it. If you were the richest person alive, you had everything that money could buy, you had superpowers, you could command anything to be at will. If it's too cold, make it warmer. If it's too warm, make it cooler. If you're hungry, boom, you fulfilled anything and everything that you could imagine. You have no want. You have no need. You are just living in absolute pure bliss. And so you might just go, for a very, very, very long time, because what else are you going to do? Shine like a star? Maybe become the sun and create your own little world full of beings that you think of as your own children. But all this experience, eventually you're going to get to the point where there's nothing new under the sun. So basically, what you'd do if you were brilliant enough at it is you would create a condition whereby you've created a virtual world, say, for example. And this virtual world you can plug into somehow. But the moment you plug into it, then all previous memory is wiped. So then, after your personal reset, everything is new under the sun. Now, because you are so brilliant, so clever, so awesome, and so God, then you would do it in such a way that there could be no room for error, for thinking, how could this possibly be fake? How can it be real? It has to be organic. It has to be organic life. So you have to surround this virtual reality realm with things that appear like real life, real random things happening, worms in the ground, birds flying in the air, fish in the sea, grasses growing, trees, mountains, rivers, streams, the whole lot. And it would be such a magnificent creation that it wouldn't no longer be a virtual reality. It would be reality. It would be the physical realm, and that is the realm that we call Earth. And then, to get here, you have to create a scenario whereby all your memory has to be wiped, clean slate. And this is something I was actually trying to get to on my rant the other day when I ran out of phone memory, so I was too busy trying to make beer and stuff, so sorry about that. So I was trying to tell you is that it was revealed to me in a dream, my own experience of what it's like prior to being born. So this is just my version of it. I'm not saying it's the correct version. I believe it was shown to me this way in a dream. so that it made sense to me. And it may be a lot different from that, or it may be very similar. It may be close to being on the ball. It might be different for every single person. And the impression I got is that I was at a place which I think of as what we would think of as limbo, where there's no time. You exist there like in a waiting room for a very, 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 very long time. But in a way, there is no time. So it's beyond time. But while you're there, of course, you have plenty of opportunity to do as what we would call burn in the fires of your own remorse. And so in a sense, that would be a hell, a type of eternal suffering, whereby you know where you stuffed up. You know how you want to improve on what you did in your last life. And you put forth the energy to say that when I come into my next incarnation, I will do better. I won't repeat the same mistakes. I will try and do a better thing. And then after all this very, very, very long non-time, you eventually becomes your turn. Okay, you are now ready to have your karmic reward, so to speak. So you then go into another room or chamber type of thing, and you go from being a non-physical sort of light being, and it's like putting on a big diver's wetsuit, but it's a full body wetsuit. And the only gaps in it are actually your eyes and maybe a slit for your mouth. I don't remember if there was a slit for the mouth. All I remember is it's like a full body lycra suit type of thing, like an extra skin, and you put that on. And then you get taken to the other place, and it's like you're on a massive big water slide. And as you go down this water slide, you go through twists and turns. And instead of coming out at the bottom into a pool of water, you sort of get shot out into nothingness of white light. And you become one with the white light. Like you lose yourself. So your entire consciousness dissolves and you are one with the light. And that is your moment of conception. And I know this because in my dream, when I'm going down the water slide the first time, I was coming around one of the twists and bends and I went too high over the side and fell off. And it was like, that was a bit of a disaster. So I went back. I was a bit, how do you do? I want to see the manager about this. I need some sort of compensation. And he didn't speak. You don't have to speak. He just looked into his face, and his face was very old but ageless. He looked a lot like my own dad, actually. Not exactly the same, but very similar. And just one look into his eyes, and he understood my situation. He smiled and didn't say, but said, rightio, we'll just get you ready for the next one. And so I went through the next loop, and that's when I basically followed another soul through, who ends up being my older brother. He's a couple of years older than me. So, but one moment you hit that point of conception, you dissolve into the light, and that is when you slowly start developing inside the womb of your mother. And in linear time for humans, it's 9 months, but from the perspective of you as that soul who became one with the light, you are in that space since the beginning of time. As you develop, you slowly gain consciousness, and you begin to hear a heartbeat. That's your mother's. You hear voices outside. You sometimes feel light, and you feel this protective cocoon all around you. And I thoroughly love my time inside the womb. I have many, many fond memories of it, and I didn't want to come out. Trust me, I did not want to come out. I was happy and content. I wanted to stay there. So this is my experience, which I wanted to talk about because I think it's relevant, because we've all been through it. Every single one of us. Just most of us don't have the capacity to remember, because most of these things are so traumatic, so stressful. But see, I was induced by the family doctor, second born of the family, and I went for a few days overdue or whatever it was, a week maybe. And so they used a little scalpel and cut the water bag that was holding me in there, because they said it's time for him to come out and you don't want to come out. I was like, hell no, this is great, because that's a nice environment. I mean, think of it, you're not even breathing, you're sort of underwater, you don't have to breathe, all your nutrients are coming into your belly button, it's all the sounds are familiar, you've known them all your life, the voices of your parents, the whole lot. It's so I came out and I looked at that doctor and I was like, I was not happy. There was bright lights and of course they held me upside down, smacked me on the bum, and I started crying, and they're like, yeah, you cried, well, and I was like, put me back. I hated it, but I tried to spend most of my time just going back into the dream state to remember what it's like being back in the womb, and that's why babies sleep so much, so they can remember what it's like. So anyway, I don't want to hijack this conversation with my own worldly experience. I could go into a lot of things that happened to me, that all of those things that are traumatic. But basically, we come into this world fresh. And so if you were God, what better way could you do to have a new experience than to put yourself through that ordeal where you have invented a way to have an experience? And let's say you don't just do it as a human. You could do it for any living creature. It starts off as an egg, fertilized, becomes a living thing. Every living thing could technically be God experiencing itself. Pardon me. And this is one of the things I was going to argue with towards Leo and his mate Albert. He's saying that evil wouldn't exist. Well, what if, in your infinite wisdom and boredom, that if everything is bliss, it in itself becomes boring? You need experience. You need to know what cold is, to know what hot is. You need to know what hate is, to know what love is. So you need to know what evil is, to know what good is. And so evil, technically, if you look at it phonetically, it is just live backwards. L-I-V-E backwards is E-V-I-L. So things that we consider evil are anti-life, which the devil lived is basically the anti-Christ. So therefore, life and Christ consciousness are one and the same thing. Christ consciousness is the light, the living word of the living God. And I was actually going to read a phrase from the only gospel that I today pay any attention to. Now, I'm not trying to say people that believe in the Bible and all that, if that works for you, that's fine. I grew up with it. It doesn't work for me. And very, very specifically, I'll read you the exact quote that is attributed to Jesus. Now, if you read the Bible, you'll find there are very few actual quotes attributed directly to Jesus, whereas the Essene Gospel of Peace, on the other hand, has been directly translated from the Aramaic scrolls found as some of these more recent Dead Sea Scrolls. And so this one was translated by some French guy, I think. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to read the thing that I think is the most relevant, because then Jesus himself sat down in their midst and said, I tell you truly, none can be happy except he do the law. And the others answered, we all do the laws of Moses, our lawgiver, even as they are written in the Holy Scriptures. And Jesus answered, seek not the law in your scriptures, for the law is life, whereas the scripture is dead. I tell you truly, Moses received not his laws from God in writing, but through the living word. The law is living word of living God to living prophets for living men. In everything that is life is the law written. You find it in the grass, in the tree, in the river, in the mountain, in the birds of heaven, in the fishes of the sea, but seek it chiefly in yourselves. For I tell you truly, all living things are nearer to God than the scripture which is without life. God so made life and all living things that they might, by the everlasting word, teach the laws of the true God to man. God wrote not the laws in the pages of books, but in your heart and in your spirit. They are in your breath, your blood, your bone, in your flesh, your bowels, your eyes, your ears, and in every little part of your body. They are present in the air, in the water, in the earth, in the plants, in the sunbeams, in the depths and in the heights. They all speak to you that you may understand the tongue and the will of the living God. But you shut your eyes that you may not see, and you shut your ears that you may not hear. I tell you truly that the scripture is the work of man, but life and all its hosts are the work of our God. Wherefore do you not listen to the words of God, which are written in his works? And wherefore do you study the dead scriptures, which are the work of the hands of men? So that's, I think, is why so many people, such as Mr. Snuffleupagus, whatever his name was, and various other atheists, are turning against the biblical scriptures, because they really understand the truth behind it is that they are dead words written by the hands of men. They are not the word of God. And as Jesus said, the word of God is the living word of the living God, is within every living thing, but we should seek it chiefly within ourselves. So we have to look within, and every sage through the beginning of time has always said that you find God within. So the atheists, they're looking without, they're looking everywhere else, and they're not finding it, and so therefore to them God does not exist. So it's just simple deduction then that they haven't looked in the greatest hiding place, which is within. There's another one here, I'll just read it for a sec. Okay, so another one I wrote in my notes is evil is life backwards. There's no reason why God has to be morally perfect according to our standards. So that's the other thing. It's like, if God was so perfect, then why does all this exist? It's like, well, maybe that's the way it was designed intentionally, because for the same reason, you'd constantly get bored if you had to do the same thing every day, if you ate the same food every day, if you didn't have a different experience every day, if you had to watch the same TV show every day, if everything stayed the same, you would get bored. So by our standards, evil things happen. And we would say, well, why would a just God allow this to happen? But from God's perspective, it's like, well, it's really only happening to God. And the one doing it is also God doing it to himself. But that aspect of himself, that spark that flew from the original fire, well, it's going to have to go through its own karmic course to make account for its things. And in my philosophical field of view, what I think is really happening is that in the long run of events is that the person who commits murder or rape or torture or anything towards any other person or living thing is that it is their karma to, in a future life, be reborn as their victim. And so they will live their whole life fully innocent of what's going to come to them and wonder, why are they doing this to themselves? Because they have already done it. And that is why, if you live your life in such a way where you're good to people and you come back in later lives to be those people, hey, happy days. Life keeps improving. So think about that, the continuous loop. That is why they say it is better to give than to receive, because in your future life, you may be that poor person on the street, desperate for something to go buy a coffee or whatever. whatever the case may be. And if you give them a couple of dollars for a coffee, well, in that future life, you'll be like, thank you so much. But what if you gave them a helping hand and said, hey, spare room in my place. How about we come and clean you up and give you a proper feed, and we'll fix you up, we'll help you find a job and get you your own place to live in. If everybody started doing that, then you'll find that the ratio of good in the world is going to improve things so much that evil won't exist. So that is where the choice of free will comes into play, is that everything's not my problem. Everything's somebody else's problem. Oh, they shouldn't have allowed themselves to get like that. There's all these excuses in the world. Maybe that is you in another lifetime. Maybe just waiting for you to come along and say, I recognize you. Let's get you some help. Let's do something. Let's make this world a better place. Isn't that what free will is really all about? You have the choice to turn away and not help, or you have the choice to put yourself out there and lend a hand. And I'm not saying any of us are any better or worse than the other, whether we do or we don't. All I'm saying is that the world itself will become a better place the more we help one another. You know, like the richest man in the world is only rich in his mind, because who can he be better than? Who can he now strive to be if he owns everything? All he's done is create misery and a shortage to everybody else. And imagine that. Imagine being so rich, you created the whole world to suffer in poverty. And you have to then subsequently reincarnate back as every single one of those people that you've affected, when it's within your powers right here and right now to make everybody's life better. Let that sink in for a minute. Okay, so I think I've covered a bit about the law of karma and cause and effect, and how sometimes we will think we see a perfectly innocent victim, and from our point of view, they are a perfectly innocent victim. But the what if factor is, what if? And so when you really sort of play every possible scenario through, the what if factor says that we are all aspects of God. Therefore, what we do to one another, we are doing to ourselves. This is kind of a profound way of understanding the world, is that being good to one another is ultimately being good to ourselves. I'm sort of losing my track of thought here because I was sort of organising for a debate, stepping in at the very last minute. I wrote down a few other things too, which I'll just go through briefly. And the one I wrote was, God must abide by his own rules. Destroy not that which I have created. So if he can instruct us to destroy not that which the Lord thy God has created, which means basically thou shalt not kill. So the living things, being God experiencing life through that particular channel, whether it be through the channel of a butterfly or the channel of a dog or the channel of a bird or the channel of a human, whatever channel it chose to take for its own karmic reasons. When we take that life without purpose, then we are destroying that which God has created. And so if you ask me, then why would the devil exist? The devil being lived backwards, as I've gone through already. Is the devil a being? Is Satan a being? Lucifer is the light bearer. It's the sun. So it's actually one of God's greatest angels, if not actually God incarnate itself. And that's one of the things. I think the great deceiver, which is Satan, which comes from the word Saturn, which is also Kronos, the god of time, the illusion, the great deceiver. So time is a deception, but we go through this deception. We like deceiving ourselves. That's why we go to movies, we go to fun fairs, we go to thrillers, we do things that will surprise and shock us because the buzz that we get from it. And that's why we incarnate as humans, not to judge, because if we're judging, we're just judging ourselves. But so if this great deceiver exists, then obviously God created this great deceiver, and therefore it has a purpose. As I said, if everything's eternal bliss, how would you know that it's bliss? It would just be what it is. It just is. It's just like, what could be? It could be something very high vibrational frequency, which could be the cause of the stars we see at night. Sonoluminescinating away. Did I just create a new word? Sonoluminescinating. I like it. Sonoluminescing is probably a bit more English correct. Yeah, I think the stars actually are creating sonoluminescence through the vibration and frequency of sound. That's how it all works. And so we call it the choir of angels because it is a choir of angels. And the sun is not like, rah! The sun is associated with the lion, the power of 10, which is 0 and 1, which is binary, the void, and 1. That's really all you need to know in numerology. All other numerals are just multiples of 1. And that's going down the rabbit hole, because in 3 dimensions, the 2 is the half a spiral, the 3 is the full spiral. 1, 2, 3. Getting a little bit off track here. So yeah, say this evil being exists, then obviously God created it and it serves a purpose. I mean, how do you sort the wheat from the chaff? You need a device. How do you sort the good seed from the bad seed? You need discernment. How do you discern which is good and which is bad, which gets discarded and which is kept and grown for the next crop? That's what it's all about. It's all about picking the best. And in fact, what's the word for it? I was going to say the word husbandry, but husbandry generally talks about the rearing of animals. But in the rearing of seeds for crops, is what you do is you pick your best crop, the best seed, and instead of going and eating that, cooking it up for your rice or whatever you're cooking at the time, you take the best ones and you sacrifice them to God. See, that's where the saying comes from. You sacrifice them to God. Who are you sacrificing them to? The Mother Earth. You let them die and you put them back in the ground, and then the crop you get the following year from the best of the best is 100 times better. And then again you pick the best and you sacrifice those ones. You can eat the rest, but you sacrifice the best of your crop to God every single time. And every year your crop gets better and better. So you are technically growing richer and richer, and you're able to feed more people. This is true richness, is by being able to grow food. And this is where we've been taken away from over so many centuries throughout the history of the Bible, and why I think the Bible is heavily, heavily butchered. They've taken out all references to the mother. Every single one. Whereas if you read the Essene Gospel in Peace, I'm just going to scroll up a little bit here. Right at the very beginning, it starts with, many sick and maimed came to Jesus asking him, if you know all things, tell us, why do we suffer with these grievous plagues? Why are we not whole like other men? Master, heal us, that we too may be made strong and need abide no longer in our misery. We know that you have it in your power to heal all manner of disease. Free us from Satan and from all his great afflictions. Master, have compassion on us. And Jesus answered, Happy are you that you hunger for the truth, for I will satisfy you with the bread of wisdom. Happy are you that you knock, for I will open to you the door of life. Happy are you that you would cast off the power of Satan, for I will lead you into the kingdom of our mother's angels, where the power of Satan cannot enter. And they asked him in amazement, Who is our mother, and which her angels, and where is her kingdom? Your mother is in you, and you in her. She bore you, she gives you life. It was she who gave to you your body, and to her shall you one day give it back again. Happy are you when you come to know her and her kingdom. If you receive your mother's angels, and if you do her laws, I tell you truly, he who does these things shall never see disease. For the power of our mother is above all, and it destroys Satan and his kingdom, and has rule over all your bodies and all your living things. The blood which runs in us is born of the blood of our earthly mother. Her blood falls from the clouds, leaps from the womb of the earth, babbles in the brooks of the mountains, flows wide in the rivers of the plains, sleeps in the lakes, rages mightily in tempestuous seas. The air which we breathe is born of the breath of our earthly mother. Her breath is azure in the heights of the heavens, soars in the tops of the mountains, whispers the leaves of the forest, billows over the cornfields, slumbers in the deep valleys, burns hot in the desert. The hardness of our bones is born of the bones of our earthly mother, of the rocks and of the stones. They stand naked to the heavens on the tops of mountains, are as giants that lie sleeping on the sides of mountains, as idols set in the desert, and are hidden in the deepness of the earth. The tenderness of our flesh is born of the flesh of our earthly mother, whose flesh waxes yellow and red in the fruits of the trees, and nurtures us in the furrows of the fields. Our bowels are born of the bowels of our earthly mother, and are hid from our eyes like the invisible depths of the earth. The light of our eyes, the hearing of our ears, both are born of the colours and the sounds of our earthly mother, which enclose us about as the waves of the sea a fish, as the eddying air a bird. So this is telling us, most specifically, as earthlings. Earthlings. What is a baby duck? A duckling. We are baby earths. The earth is our mother. Where do you find any of that in the Bible? You don't find it. This is why I say the Essene, gospel of peace. Now, if you know anything about the Essenes, E-S-S-E-N-E-S, Essenes, it's where the word essential comes from, is that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was raised as an Essene, and these people were very strict, completely vegetarian sect of people that lived in the desert. So they went with very little things, and they had very, very strict guidelines. And so basically, when someone was called a nun or a virgin, it was one and the same thing. You know, a young girl was reared strictly under very strict guidelines. And so it was impossible for a virgin to become pregnant unless something untoward happened. And unfortunately, these strict people had such strong laws that if somebody disobeyed them, they'd probably get stoned to death unless a man would step forward and speak on their behalf and become the husband for them, which is where Joseph steps in. He was an older man. I don't know if he'd had children or a wife of his own previously or not. Doesn't really matter, but he was a good man and obviously knew that Mary was pure and said he would become her husband. And so that's how the virgin birth came about to be. And this is a little known fact that most people say, well, Jesus would be of Middle Eastern appearance with the brown skin, dark eyes, and so on and so forth. But the thing was, he was blue-eyed and blonde-haired. And that's what stood him apart from everybody else. These things do happen. It's nothing to do with being racially for or against any one or the other. It's just the way it was. Freaks of nature happen. And Jesus just happened to be one of those freaks of nature. He was truly born of a virgin. So because they were such a strict sect for so long, what happens is, if we started to live strictly, we stopped killing animals to eat them to try and give our bodies nutrition, as though, it's a similar saying, we'll chop up bits of plastic and rubber and metal and glass and all the things that cars are made of, grind it up and put it in the fuel tank, and the car's going to run better and heal itself as it goes. That's the mentality of eating dead flesh for us. We need the living word of the living God and living foods, which of course is what Jesus taught us in the Last Supper, is that the bread they made back then is much different from the bread we make today. They took the grain, they sprouted the grain, and after a few days of sprouting it had brought the germ alive. It gets put into the sun, photosynthesis, it gets roughly mashed into a flat cake, baked on a hot rock in the sun, turned over at midday. So all that chlorophyll content makes it a living food. When you take that and eat it, it's not his body. It is the body of our earthly mother that we are eating it. And again, with the blood of the earth, grape juice, anything that is made from nature is the mother's flesh and blood. And so if you eat the living flesh and blood of the living mother, then you will find eternal life. You will not know diseases. If you eradicate parasites, it's in this particular gospel, the Essene gospel, he teaches different ways of eradicating parasites through fasting, through putting some milk in a hot place in the sun so that the fumes attract to this very, very sickly man, and the worm comes out his mouth and they extract this great big long thing which he crushes it, and they call it Satan, of course, because all disease, all evil things, all things of the devil that create death, Satan, if you want to use the metaphor for it. And so he crushes it, and the man suddenly was no longer crippled and could walk again because he'd removed this major parasite that had been drawing all the energy out of his life force all his life. So there's so much to natural living. So parasites thrive on death and disease. So that's why so many of us are full of them, because we're putting dead shit into our bodies. I could think of nothing worse than eating a big chunk of dead cow butt or strips of pig butt. It has to be smoked to give it flavour and all that. Bacon. It's like, some religious cults become that way because they understand that it's not a religion to the God so much. It's a religion to the body, the holy temple that you dwell in. The temple. Why do we always point to the temple here? Because that's where the mind of God exists. And as they say, when the master returns to the house, the temple, and he finds it not to his liking, then even though he may visit, he will leave again. So you have to prepare the temple. You have to fast and cleanse and eat pure foods, become a living conduit of the living word of the living God. And then when the master returns, he will find it pleasing, and there he will dwell. So thank you for listening, and have a blessed Sunday. I'll talk to you next time.